Hello, and thank you for joining us again on the Job Done Right podcast. We stream a new episode every 2 weeks, starting in the spring and going through fall. Our goal is to provide useful advice on controlling weeds and insects and growing forage, grass, and wildlife food plots. If you find Job Done Right useful, we hope you'll subscribe, share it with your friends, and let us know your thoughts. We make new episodes based on your input, so voice your opinion. We have a special guest today to discuss a topic that gained renewed popularity in the past year: gardening. Retired University of Georgia Extension Director Lannie Lanier will provide useful advice on vegetable gardening in the heat of summer. Lannie spent 35 years educating the residents of Georgia about gardening, farming, animal nutrition, and many other topics. He supervised 40 county offices and the research and demonstration farms in Southeast Georgia. This included the well-known Coastal Georgia Botanical Garden in Savannah and the first and only certified organic research farm in the university system at the time. Lannie, it's a pleasure to have you with us today. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, and I appreciate the invitation to be here.
Well, you have dedicated pretty much your entire career to the people of Georgia, specifically the University of Georgia, which is a land-grant university. Would you tell us a little bit more about what it means to be a land-grant university and what the extension system does?
Sure. The mission of a land-grant university is to take the university to the people. And way back in 1862, legislation was passed and signed by President Abraham Lincoln that created the land-grant university system. And you can go online and just go to your search engine and type in land-grant university. And the ones will pop up on a map all over the United States. And you can find the one that is closest to you. Hopefully your home state has one. Most states have at least one. Some states have two or three. But that land-grant university is a source of information. They have an experiment station system and they have an extension service. And the mission is to take the university to the people, and the research and the educational findings that come out of the laboratories can be shared with the people of the state. And that's what a land grant does.
Well, you are certainly more than qualified to talk about a full range of topics when it comes to property management, but today we want to focus on vegetable gardening. Now, I know in your former role, you oversaw the Vidalia Onion and Vegetable Research Center, but tell us a little bit about your personal operation when it comes to vegetable gardening.
Okay, we have a 1/10 of an acre home garden, which is fairly large, but it fits and it's very convenient. It works well for us. Some of the things we grow are potatoes, broccoli, we've got cabbage, bell peppers, jalapeno peppers, romaine lettuce, butter beans, peas, tomatoes, squash, and zucchini. And it's all very productive. And I brought a couple of things here. And we're well into the squash right now. And they're highly productive. And we have to stay ahead of it. But it's a fun thing to do. And with COVID and a lot of other things going on, the gardening interest has just exploded. And there are people with gardens now that have never had gardens in the past, and they have a lot of questions about what they need to be doing with their garden.
Now, you mentioned you are gardening 1/10 of an acre. That seems pretty specific. Is there a reason you chose just 1/10?
It's a good size. And it's for a lot of reasons. It is about 60 by 70, which is 4,300 square feet, which is almost exactly 1/10 of an acre. Most of your products are, the recommendation for rates is in pounds or whatever per acre. If my fertilizer recommendation is 500 pounds of 10, 10, 10 per acre, I divide that by 10 and I need one 50-pound bag, which is plenty. If I need to apply 1 ton of lime, 2,000 pounds on 1/10 of an acre, I need 200 pounds, which is 4 50-pound bags. Is make it very simple. If the application rate for a product is 16 ounces per acre in 20 gallons of water, I can put 1.6 ounces in 2 gallons of water and get good coverage. It's just a very convenient measurement. It's large enough that you can have plenty of production. You can try a lot of different things, and it just makes it simple.
That makes sense to me. Make it simple, very smart approach. Now, as you mentioned, we're well into the gardening season, but for some of the people that are just starting out and planting their garden, what do you suggest they take as far as an approach to planting their garden and vegetables to plant?
First thing to do is to go to your website and find your local county extension office through your land grant and request some information about what does well in your area. We're in coastal Georgia, and we can have great recommendations here that work for us. You're in Wisconsin. I may not be able to help you a great deal because your climate is just so much different from what we have. That's why the best information is always local. The local information is always best. Whatever comes from your local state land grant university, follow that information. Call your local office. If you can't get in touch with your local office, go to your website, and there are some great publications. They're free. You can download gardening publications that are really, really great, give you a lot of good information, and they'll get you started on the right track.
That's great advice. So basically, keep it local. Now, once you have a plan for what you're going to grow, what do you suggest as far as it comes to selecting plant varieties?
Again, go back to what works locally. For us, we want to pick tomato varieties that are disease resistant, and whatever the pests are in your particular area, your local land grant is going to recommend varieties that deal with those pests. You want to get varieties and spread out. Don't get all of your varieties that come off early or mid or late. Try to plant some of each. You'll have some that come off early and some that come off later. You don't want everything ready at one time so you get overwhelmed. You want to spread out your maturity dates so that everything's not ready all at once.
Okay. Now, you mentioned we're in Wisconsin. As people can probably tell or guess, you're in Georgia right now. Both these states get really, really hot in the summertime. So how do people prepare their gardens and keep them prepared during the heat of the summertime?
You need to have your garden in a place where it is accessible to water, close to an outlet where you could run sprinklers. I can promise that you will need to. I've been running sprinklers because it's in the 90s this week here. But where we are in the south, we have a heavy dew fall most nights. We have high humidity, the temperature drops at night, and about 10 p.m. we have dew that falls, and the plants get wet, and they stay wet until about 9 or 10 the next morning. That's the ideal time to water because they're wet anyway. So you run your sprinklers at night. It's the best time. And if you're in an arid climate where it gets really, really hotter, even hotter than we get in the daytime, there are studies everywhere that show that you lose about 80% of your water to evaporation if you water in the heat of the day. If there's no cloud cover, if it's windy, and if it's hot, you're just wasting water and the energy that it took to pump it. So water at night when it's cool, you have less wind, it's more efficient, and you drastically cut your evaporation, and you also cut your plant disease at the same time. So water at night.
Very interesting. Would never have guessed that. Now, when it comes time to harvesting the crops, are there any tips you have?
Yes. Try to stay ahead of it. Things like squash, tomatoes, or zucchinis, they don't last too long. They'll go overripe very quickly. Try to harvest on time. If you're going to be out of town, going off for the weekend, going on vacation, whatever, call your neighbors, call your friends and say, come get some vegetables because they'll be bad when you get back or they'll be overripe. So you'll have more than enough to share if you do it the way we have discussed, and just stay on top of it. You try to pick every day or at least every other day, and you'll have enough to can, you'll have enough to freeze, you'll have fresh products, and you'll have some to give away.
That sounds great. Now, you mentioned there's a ton of information out there to help gardeners. Are there any resources you specifically recommend?
Yeah, I applaud Ragan and Massey for looking at this to provide information for gardeners, but there are lots of good publications. The single best place you can go is to your land grant. Look up your state and get your gardening publications that are written for your state. And you may even find that if you have different soil regions or different climate regions within a state, you can zoom in on your particular county and see what does well there. We're in coastal Georgia. What works for us doesn't necessarily work up in the mountains. So specific, local.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Our time is about up, but do you have any final words of wisdom for the amateur gardeners out there like myself?
Yes, it needs to be fun. Don't be overwhelmed. Don't try to tackle too much at one time. You may not want to go 1/10 of an acre. I probably wouldn't do it if I was a novice. I would start off slow. Maybe even take a look at growing things in containers or some raised beds before you tackle a big garden like that. Grow some things that are easy to grow. All the plants that I mentioned are just super easy to grow, and make it fun. It does not need to be drudgery. It just needs to be fun, and you always enjoy it more when it's fun. And homegrown vegetables just taste better.
I think we can all agree with that. Well, thank you so much for your time today. We've all learned a lot, and we appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
For more questions and answers about gardening, lawn care, and property management, visit the advice section of RaganandMassey.com. You can also visit the Ragan and Massey channel on YouTube for dozens of informative videos. Thank you again for joining us today. Make sure to subscribe to the Job Done Right podcast and tell your friends too. If you have questions you'd like answered on the podcast, please share them with us through our social media channels or RaganandMassey.com. Until next time, happy gardening!